Peace and blessings, peace and blessings. I am back for another episode of Dominion Mondays. Another episode of Dominion Mondays. Look like I got some flour here. Yes, another episode of Dominion Mondays. I am on location today and I am on the West Coast. And so you can see the sunlight shining into where I am right now. So that is an indication that this is a pre-recorded session, but nonetheless, wanted to come to you for another Monday because Mondays are made for Dominion. I welcome you to this Monday segment. I entitled this segment, "The Children of Israel Can Teach Us About Deliverance and Promise." The children of Israel can teach us about deliverance and promise. We are in the month of Adar. We are in the month of Adar. And as a matter of fact, according to the Hebraic calendar, we are in, or rather, the children of Israel celebrated what they call Purim. And you can find that in the book of Esther. I don't want to dig into that tonight, but just want to remind you that we are in the month of Adar. The month of Adar is the 12th month on the Hebraic calendar. The 12th month on the Hebraic calendar, so representing that last month of the year according to the Hebraic calendar. We know that the number 12 represents divine or apostolic government. In this month of Adar, that month, or rather the alphabet, the Hebraic alphabet that is associated with the month of Adar, it is representative of joy. Symbolically, that alphabet, the Kaf, Kuf, is symbolic of joy. It is symbolic of joy. So this should be a joyful month. And in fact, I posted a prophetic message about getting reacquainted with joy for this month of Adar. The tribe associated with this month is Naphtali. Naphtali. And if you know anything, if you studied the 12 tribes of Israel, you would know that Naphtali or Naphtali, depending upon how you pronounce it, that particular tribe was a part of the rear guard. That tribe was a part of the rear guard. And so the rear guard, meaning that they helped to usher in the presence of the Lord, ushering in his glory. And that rear guard in the Hebrew or in scripture, it also stands for reward. Reward. And so there's a lot prophetically that God is unveiling and revealing to us in this month of Adar. And I cannot re-emphasize enough that we cannot just simply adhere to the Gregorian calendar, which is a calendar that we typically adhere to day after day, month after month, week after week, year after year. But we also need to get into and step into God's prophetic timing by looking at and following that Hebraic calendar. Now, having said all of that, we will soon be entering the month of Nisan or Aviv. Nisan or Aviv, which is the first month on the Hebraic calendar. It is also the month where we celebrate Passover. It is the month where we celebrate Passover. And so when you look at it and when you think about it a little bit differently or from a different perspective, that month of Nisan, or that first month on the Hebraic calendar in which we celebrate Passover, is a reset. It is a month of not only spring, it is a month of not only new life and giving birth to new things, but it is also a month of reset. And so that was a bit of a soft opening for you all tonight in regards to the children of Israel and what they can teach us in regards to deliverance and promise. And so with that, I want to jump right in to the message, or right into what I want to give to you all tonight on this Dominion Monday. Um, so I've been reading through um, the first 5 books of the Bible. I'm in the book of Numbers now, and I just thinking about and really asking God to give me a little bit more revelation just around the Passover and the journey of the children of Israel, the journey from their now Exodus into the wilderness, and then, of course, into the promised land. All right. And so we know that the Passover um, it preceded the deliverance or the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, and it ushered them into the wilderness, or rather they were ushered into the wilderness after the Passover and the exodus from Egypt. And so we also know that prophetically as well, that the Passover also is pointing to and is indicative of what Christ is in terms of being our Passover lamb. Okay, so I wanted to say that because I always, always, always want to point back to Jesus and what I share with you all. But having said that, so the children of Israel receive their instructions. The plagues hit Egypt. They receive their instructions on what they need to do in order to step into that Passover. And then after the Passover, they go into this great, great, awesome exodus from the land of Egypt. And I'm not doing a good job of really breaking down those events, because that's not necessarily what the emphasis or the highlight of what I want to talk to you about tonight. But I encourage you to go back and read that in the book of Exodus. And so as I was reading, as I'm, starting to crack open this book of Numbers, um, what the Lord gave to me was some things that I want to share with you all. And again, I'm just talking. It's not necessarily a prepared teaching like I normally do, but I want to talk to you about deliverance and promise as it relates to the children of Israel. Deliverance and promise as it relates to the children of Israel. Okay. And so when we think about deliverance um, it was not only an act, right? It was not only what God did for the children of Israel, but can I convince you on tonight that deliverance is a process? Deliverance is a process. So what do I mean by that? The children of Israel, while they're in bondage in Egypt, they cry out to God. God responds to their cries. They go through the Passover. They go through the plagues of Egypt, right? The plagues pass over them, and then they have this parting of the Red Sea, and now they go into or step into their exodus from Egypt into, now they're going to be ushered into the wilderness. So they are delivered from their place of bondage. They're delivered from their place of bondage. Physically, they are delivered. But we see and we know that in scripture, mentally, behaviorally, the children still needed some work, if you will. And so when I say that deliverance is a process, deliverance is a process in terms of you can be delivered physically, but there are still some other things that you still may need deliverance from, and that you may need to go through in order to get to your promise. So deliverance is a process. And many of us understand and know that we just don't go through deliverance one time. There are a number of things that we must be delivered from. There are a number of things that we must be delivered from. And so we go through that process of deliverance, not just once, but throughout our lives, So the first lesson that we get from the children of Israel is that deliverance is a process. The second lesson that we learn from the children of Israel is that deliverance has a purpose. Deliverance has a purpose. How many of us know that God is not a wasteful God? God is not a wasteful God. He does not waste our experiences. He does not waste the things that He brings us into, nor does He waste even when we get ourselves into certain situations and circumstances. And so, in this, in this, in what we see with the children of Israel, we see that deliverance for them is a process, but we see that deliverance for them, it has a purpose, because He has to deliver them from bondage, bring them into the wilderness, and then eventually bring them into their promised land. And so in that, we know that deliverance precedes the promise, which is why deliverance has a purpose, because deliverance is purpose to bring you into your promise. So deliverance is a process, deliverance has a purpose, and deliverance precedes your wilderness experience. Deliverance precedes your wilderness experience. And even in that, your wilderness experience has a purpose as well. But can I tell you that the wilderness experience that the children of Israel went through, that wilderness experience was to transform them. When you are delivered physically, because deliverance is a process, there is still a transformation that needs to take place before you can step into your promise. Okay? So God delivered them from their place of bondage. Now God brings them into the wilderness to deliver them from the mindset and from the behaviors that they still have from having been in bondage, right? And so that wilderness process is a transformative place for the children of Israel before they can step into their promise. Now, that wilderness experience is heavy. And I don't know if, I'm sure many of you, even right now, may be experiencing a wilderness season in your life. Can I tell you on tonight that your wilderness season is ultimately going to usher you into being ready, being capable, and being prepared to receive the promises of God? All right. So what do I want to re-emphasize here about the deliverance preceding the wilderness? So you have the process really here with the children of Israel is this: they were delivered in terms of they went through their exodus. They were then ushered into the wilderness, which is the place of transformation. which preceded the promise. And then, after having successfully gone through the wilderness and enduring the wilderness, they were then ready to receive and move into the promised land. But I don't want to just jump over that wilderness experience, because that wilderness experience, it has some key things that we must understand about the wilderness, so that when we go through this deliverance process, we will understand and be more capable and more able to endure our wilderness season. So I got a couple key things that I want to share with you about the wilderness, okay? And that wilderness being a place of transformation. What many of us experience in the wilderness is wrestling. We experience wrestling, and we see with the children of Israel, they did plenty of wrestling in the wilderness. Okay, they did plenty of wrestling in the wilderness. All right, and much of that wrestling has to deal with what is already in you from your place of bondage that you have not let go of and you have not shed yet, and you are wrestling with where God is wanting to take you to in terms of the promise. And oftentimes in that wrestling, we're wrestling because we feel like we're not ready. We're wrestling because we feel like we are inadequate now to receive the promises that God has for us. The second thing I want you to understand about that wilderness season is that that is a season of reprioritization. It is a season, it is a place of reprioritization. Okay. You see, in your prior life, before you were delivered, there was something or someone that you were serving, right? And you needed to be delivered from. And then once you were delivered from that, God brings you into that wilderness place because He has to reprioritize or reorder your priorities. Making Him the priority now is what you must do in order to walk into your place of promise. The wilderness is also a place of transition. Transitions can be very difficult. Transitions feel like holding patterns and holding places, right? But it is just that. It is to transition, meaning to move you from one place, one state of mind to the next. Okay. Your place of wilderness is also a place of preparation. It is also a place of preparation, right? And so the things that you experience in the wilderness help you to be ready and prepare you for your promise. This is what we see with the children of Israel. God couldn't just simply take them out of Egypt and then plop them into the promised land. That would have been a detriment to the children of Israel, but rather He had to bring them into the wilderness so that He could prepare them to walk into the promise. Now we know many of them did not make it through that wilderness in the way in which they should have. Many died before they even received the promise. And so those that stepped into the promise were not the original ones that even walked through the Exodus or the deliverance. Okay. Your deliverance is also a reformation. It is a place, it is a season, it is a time of reformation. You see here in the book of Numbers, where I am now, I'm seeing where God now is is uh, establishing a formation with the children of Israel, starting with Judah. Judah representing praise, right? And then the last one in the lineup is Naphtali, right? Who is one of the three tribes of the rear guard representing the glory. And so the Reformation starts with you entering into a place now. Even that wilderness place needs to be a place where you reconnect with the worship of God, right? And then the tail end of that, or the rear guard now, is the glory of God that you then experience. So the wilderness is also a place of reformation. Okay. In the wilderness, is where the children of Israel get a new perspective on God and God's laws. So you see, in the wilderness, they receive God's law. And there are many of them. In fact, I even said to myself, I said, thank God that I wasn't one of the children of Israel, because I don't know if I could have made it through all of what God had them to actually walk through. But God gives you a new perspective on his law, i.e., his word in the wilderness. Okay? We also see that in the wilderness, that God uses that wilderness place so that he can get reacquainted and reconnected with you through what? Through thanksgiving, through praise, and through worship. When Moses went to Pharaoh, Moses's message to Pharaoh was that he was to let the people go so that they could do what? Go and worship. Go and worship the Most High God. And so going into the wilderness represents a place where you need to reconnect with God in thanksgiving, reconnect with him in praise, and reconnect with him in worship. So let me say this. So taking it from the top again, right? Deliverance is a process. Deliverance has a purpose. And we know now that deliverance also precedes that wilderness experience, that time of wilderness, and that wilderness season. So let me close out with this last thing. And this is really the key lesson. It is the key lesson. And I'm telling you, when the Lord dropped this on me, I almost fell off the bed. And almost fell off the bed, more so in excitement, because it helps me to now understand the purpose of the wilderness, but also the purpose of deliverance. Okay. And actually, let me say this before I go to my last point. Let me say this. And this is going back to the wilderness season. Okay. I wrote a couple of things down that I want to make sure before I go to my last point that you get. Okay. Your wilderness season, this is why you must respect and honor that wilderness season. Your wilderness experience and season is your authorization for the promise. Okay? Your wilderness season and experience is your authorization for the promise. If you die during and in the process of your wilderness, you forfeit the promise. So, what am I saying to you all on tonight? What is the key lesson that we can glean from the children of Israel as it pertains to deliverance and promise on tonight? It is this: you can receive God's deliverance and not necessarily receive nor walk into his promises. Let me say that one more time. You can receive God's deliverance and not necessarily receive nor walk into or walk in God's promises. That is the lesson we get from the children of Israel, because there were many that died in the wilderness. There were many that could not stand up and could not withstand what God required in the wilderness. But can I tell you tonight that God has given you, he has already endowed you, he has already empowered you to make it through the wilderness. Don't die in your wilderness season after having received the deliverance, because behind the deliverance and the wilderness comes the promise. Your wilderness is the authorization for the promise. Your wilderness is the gateway to the promise. Don't die in the wilderness. The wilderness is not meant for you to die. The wilderness is meant for you to be strengthened. It is meant to make you more capable, and it is meant to prepare you for the promise. So don't die in it. Don't die in it. Don't present yourself disobedient nor obstinate in the wilderness. I hope you catch this on tonight. But it is God's expectation that you be able to handle the wilderness. It is God's expectation that you can receive and that you can learn and that you can emerge from your wilderness season not only ready to receive and step into the promised land or the promises of God, but that you step into it as a new person, as a new being, as one that has been now reformed, renewed, and restored. Don't die in your wilderness season. Don't stop at just receiving God's deliverance, but get through the wilderness and get to your promise. Get through deliverance, get through the wilderness, and get to your promise. I pray that this message has been a blessing to you on tonight. And I will see you next Monday for Dominion Monday, because Mondays are made for dominion. May you all have a blessed and powerful and purposeful week. Walk in your authority and walk in the dominion that God has given you. Be blessed.